after 100,000 voters in Michigan voted uncommitted,
Mhm.
and the IDF opened fire on hundreds of Palestinians trying to get food and killing over 100 in what's now been dubbed the Flower Massacre. Maybe Joe Biden and company have slightly begun to change their tune on the whole ceasefire thing. Or, as we'll look at, maybe they're changing their definition of ceasefire. Okay, so remember, we're like 5 days out from this possible ground invasion of Rafah. Again, on Sunday, it's the eve of Ramadan, to add insult to injury, because that's all the IDF knows how to do. And so the U.S. decided this week to drop some aid. This is the first time in 5 months they've done this. Remind you, there are border trucks at the border trying to get in with food that is spoiling, trying to save Gazans' lives as they starve. But here was the US dropping aid. They did this on Saturday and they did it again just today. Take a quick look here. It's only audio, but I wanted to how do I throw this up here? So here they have like people running to the ocean as like very ominous, almost like cartoonishly evil parachutes sort of fall down into the water, and like some of them kind of a little too far offshore. So there's families running to get them. And so you see people scrambling over one of the packages. There's folks picking them up, walking with them. Okay, so that was sort of what that looked like. And I guess I wanted to get your reaction. There were about like 38,000 meals in the first drop, like 36,000 meals in the second drop. I think my biggest thing with this food drop was how inept it makes Joe Biden look as just like a diplomat, like on some like you're the president of the country with the biggest military on earth shit, that you cannot get your own ally to open the goddamn border. You have to do this sort of almost like symbolic airdrop, which is what some analysts actually called it. But what did you make of this, Em?
I think there's people blocking the border for humanitarian aid to enter. Move them out of the way. I mean, people have no problem moving protesters out of the way. We have no problem moving tanks into crowded areas. We have no problem infiltrating refugee camps. Move them out of the way.
Yeah.
It is, you give them the gentle hug that you wanted me to give at the airport. Lift them up like a surfboard and carefully set them somewhere else. Let's go. Move the trucks in.
Absolutely. So this was a former USAID director said to Al Jazeera that the airdrops are symbolic and designed in ways to appease the domestic base, so really us voters. Really what needs to happen is more crossings and more trucks going in every day. He added, I think the United States is weak, and it's really disappointing. The U.S. has the ability to compel Israel to open up more aid, and by not doing that, we are putting our assets and our people at risk and potentially creating more chaos in Gaza. I mean, and that's another thing is like there is like, you know, the IDF was like, we had no choice but to open fire on people because there was chaos. It's like also dropping food from the sky does create chaos. Like there's nothing orderly about at a distance dropping food. Again, I guess something's better than nothing, and I think this is proof that pressure has been working. But yeah,
being in Michigan right now, I did a comedy show here on Saturday, and I was like, y'all are pretty powerful over here. Michigan is really flexing its muscles, and I'm feeling pretty impressed at how people have been organizing in Michigan to kind of turn the tide. And to be able to, it's just
what did you
so.
receive? Were there cheers? Were they happy, or is it like, don't
Oh
talk
no,
about
they're happy.
politics?
I mean, Michigan has made a lot of huge changes in the last 30, 40 years, and it's a real powerhouse here. One of my cousins works in refugee resettlement, and people are really aware of what's going on globally, and it's a really powerhouse state. So I'm pretty impressed with Michigan.
Hell
So,
yeah.
and it's given us like a clear alternative forward, the uncommitted vote. It's like, oh, here's something that can tangibly happen that puts
Yes.
something in the spoke.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it seems like it's working. This weekend, Vice President Harris was in Selma, Alabama, commemorating Bloody Sunday, walking the Edmund Pettus Bridge again. And, it felt really hollow to me because I'm like, this is at a time when your administration is greenlighting and funding genocide. But she then gave a speech, and let's sort of analyze what she said and what she didn't say. Take a look.
And given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire for at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table.
Okay, so for at least the next 6 weeks, hang on, I'm almost done with the disclaimers, and do not take before operating heavy machinery. There's just a lot of caveats and carve outs. So she's really forceful here. When I heard this, I was like, oh, okay. Are you stepping out? Are you trying to make a name for yourself? And then it's 6 weeks, at least the next 6 weeks. But you hear the crowd, and they're incredibly enthusiastic about this. It definitely should not be lost on people that not just Arab and Muslim communities are demanding ceasefire, but increasingly the Black community and Black voters are like, this is our guy. And Black pastors have had that. I mean, hundreds of them have signed letters, an open letter for a ceasefire. So now they're saying it, Em. Now they're saying ceasefire, but it's not permanent. In fact, the line now, the policy line is it's going to be, we're advocating for 6 weeks. Now, I'm of the belief that they're not even going to get 6 weeks to go down. But that, I don't know how did that come across to you? I want to sort of get into some other analysis, but what did you think of it? Wait, before I do, actually, let me just show you that apparently her speech was tougher. But supposedly, before she gave it, she sent it to the National Security Council for review, and it was harsher on Israel about the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza and the need for more aid. But it was harsher than what she ultimately delivered. Apparently, the NSC edited it according to one of the current officials and a former official. So this is Kamala's team that kind of let media know, we actually wanted to go further. But yeah. So what do you make of her maybe trying to stake a little bit of a different tone than Biden?
I think, in the past, they called it a humanitarian pause over Thanksgiving so we could all get our Black Friday TVs without any guilt. And now we're back. Now we're using ceasefire because I think there's some sort of, we're trying to be assuaged or something, but
Right.
I don't know. I feel like her team kind of threw under the bus. We were actually going to go a little bit more hard against Israel, but she kind of backed off. I don't know. It's
Or
a
I think
lot.
it's basically saying that the NSC, the higher ups were like, nah, can't say this, can't say that, make it real quick and snappy. So, but you're right that yeah, they are just kind of moving the definition. Here was Adam Johnson, who's been on this show, and he wrote for The Nation that their definition of ceasefire, as the below the fold reporting is made clear, he's giving this media analysis that basically all the headlines that say Kamala and Biden are calling for ceasefire are not so. It's not an end to the quote war or the current iteration of the hostilities, but a pause in fighting to facilitate hostage exchanges and at least nominally humanitarian aid. Such a pause happened for about a week in late November, but as Euromed, human rights monitor, noted at the time, Israel simply increased its killing by 40% the week after to make up for lost time. You know how that whole, when you're slacking on the job, I guess, of ethnic cleansing, you got to make up for it. Double dose.
Also during that time, I believe they took more hostages and prisoners from West Bank and kind of backloaded their number of prisoners and hostages that they had. So
100%. Yeah.
It's just a complete dumpster fire while kids are, kids, families, men, everybody is just starving and cold and homeless. And even that video with the drop of the supplies, just a testament to the patience and calmness of the Palestinian people that were able to retrieve the drop and walk away with packages. I know if the situation was here in the United States, it would be like the doors of like a super Walmart, and it would be like
Yes.
literally like chaos. So
Absolutely. Absolutely, the fact I know. Well, in addition to not having food, and shelter, they probably also don't have access to weapons, the way we do. So, but of course, the IDF would have you believe different, you know? And now, apparently, according to the IDF, yeah, they're using their their own skin as human shields against, protecting the Hamas. Anyway, it's just so sad. I
it's so much horseshit. It's hard to even believe that this is like being like served. Like this is it's like, who believes this? This is just this is so clearly full of shit.
Look, later on, Kamala Harris reaffirmed, Israel's right to exist and all this, the same talking points that we've heard all over and over and over again. Here's my fun prediction. It's not. They're going to reach no ceasefire by Sunday. And the idea of calling it a ceasefire now, when they truly are just mean humanitarian pause, while they're not pausing weapons deliveries, while they're not pausing, the amount that they're funding this whole thing, it's ridiculous. And so, and it's always felt, and I'm sure you've been following this since the beginning, since 5 months ago, but ceasefires always felt like the lowest bar we could possibly call for, when what we truly want is like the liberation of Palestinian people, in my opinion, and like their own sovereignty, considering they don't actually have control of their own territory, their own lives. They don't have a state, whatnot. They are occupied. So, but like now that they're saying ceasefire, I'm like, first of all, number one, you don't mean it. Number two, like ceasefire is like, it's just all performative. But so it's the folks in Michigan who are getting them scared. And today you've got people voting. And again, it's unclear. Michigan is very clear. You vote uncommitted. Some states have an uncommitted, little like checkbox. Others have a write-in candidate. Others in California, I know the move was don't write in anything, leave it blank. So who knows? But anything to take away, I think, and this is what I believe, from the polls, from the numbers and the percentage points for Biden is good. It's good because it will teach him and it will tell him, you need to change fucking course, because the lives we can save between now and November are hundreds of thousands, as people, literally starve to death. So just before we go, or move on, I also just want to show Mark Weisbrot of CEPR, what is it, the Council on Economic Policy page, what is it? Anyway, we love CEPR. They put out this polling because, again, moving beyond ceasefire, which we know the majority of Democrats support ceasefire, but how do we get that ceasefire? What are the mechanisms of pressure? CEPR found that 62% of President Biden's 2020 voters supported halting all arms shipments to Israel. Only 14% of Biden voters do not. Like, this is wild. Center for Economic and Policy Research. Thank you. Like, straight up, like, we want ceasefire. Here's how you get it. Stop selling them weapons, at least. Like, I don't know what can be clearer, but as we've talked about on this show, Biden's a Zionist. He is ideologically committed to genocide, like sadly a lot of people who I used to consider friends are. And it doesn't matter how many lives are going to be lost, and it doesn't matter if he himself loses the fucking election over this. But
turns it back over to the end of our democracy. It's the stakes could not be higher. And it would just be so easy to be like, you know what? I don't personally agree with this because I am an evil, old, decrepit Zionist. However, 80% of the people who elected me do believe, and so I'm going to turn this over and change course to save democracy and at least listen to the people who supported me. It would be the easiest and smoothest decision to try to do something, but this is just burning it to the ground. It's just pouring the
100%.
gasoline trail and holding the lighter at the end, like, oh, I'm going to take this to the end.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuationroom. Do it.